This presentation is about revising to improve tone. And we could discuss revising tone in terms of 4 different elements: formality, reader orientation, directness, and presupposition. Formality is something you're probably most familiar with, and you know, generally speaking, when to be more or less formal. And here are some of the people that you might consider for each of those categories. Some ways to discuss formality. Number 1, contractions are generally okay as long as it's used balanced in a relatively balanced way. Personal pronouns are generally okay, as in these examples. Plain language, it's generally preferred that you use straightforward language, so instead of require, choose need. Instead of be cognizant of, probably just should know. Prioritize, a little bit too much. Utilize especially, you might want to avoid, because it's just simpler to say use or use. For prepositions, technically you shouldn't end a sentence on one, though Chicago says it doesn't matter, but it's okay to use a preposition at the end of a sentence when you're speaking in a professional setting, or even when you're writing. And also when you're going to try to make sure you're using whom correctly in the objective case. It's pretty formal. With whom did you meet versus who did you meet with? It's a matter of finding the balance, and that's generally what you're going to go towards in professional writing. The second way to improve tone is to revise for reader orientation. There are 5 ways to do so. Number 1, make the reader the subject of a positive message. So if you're going to receive a bonus check, rather makes sense to focus on the reader by putting them as the subject you will receive. Obviously, by contrast, avoid making the reader the subject of a negative message. Your grant proposal was not selected, so maybe in that case we want to focus on us as the writer. Although we were unable to fund your grant proposal, we invite you to apply again next year. Also, you could make the reader the subject if the reader's action is required. Timesheets for student workers should be sent to payroll next Friday. Well, who should be sending them to payroll? The department head should send timesheets for student workers to payroll next Friday. So the point here is that you make the reader the subject if they're the ones that need to take the action. Maybe you want to make the reader the focus by putting them in the subject slot if you want to address their needs, concerns, or interests. In this report example, I'm focusing a lot on myself, my report. I will discuss my recommendation versus who I'm writing to, the Allen Corporation, or this report. Allen Corporation, again, is more of a reader orientation. When you need to explain negative messages or negative content to a reader, here are 5 strategies for doing so. You could deny the existence of what's being requested. We no longer carry apple trees. You could talk about the agency of somebody else. We only sell wholesale, but this other nursery can fill your order, so who can actually do the thing? Timing. Now is not the best time to do what's been requested. Your apple trees are more likely to flourish if you purchase them 2 months from now. Maybe you want to talk about denying the request by highlighting a benefit to the reader. If they asked for an apple trees don't normally thrive in this climate. We recommend you purchase a fig tree instead, so to the reader's benefit. Or maybe you just need to deny the request because of inability. Because of unprecedented demand, we only have 2 trees left in stock. These are 5 ways to deny a request in a way that is improved in tone. Now for directness. You can ask a series of questions about assessing the appropriate level of directness, such as are you imposing on the reader? Are you unfamiliar with them? Are they higher in a professional hierarchy? Some ways to achieve indirectness is by adding elements to imperatives. So if you're asking somebody to do something, it could be very direct. Or you could use one of these markers, such as a deference marker. Please submit your report. So please. Phrase your request as a question. Could you submit your report? You could add uncertainty to it, if possible. You could generalize your request to everybody in general. All reports are due on Friday. You could make it a nominal, which we discussed as being a way to make it wordy, but in some cases maybe it's better. The deadline for report submission is Friday. You could incur a debt, is what the strategy is called. I would appreciate it having your report by Friday. Or you could apologize for the request. Sorry for the short notice, but I need your report by Friday. So these are ways to mitigate the forcefulness of the directness, or you could find some other way to not have it an imperative. The last one about improving tone is presupposition. Presupposition triggers are words that convey a truth, a judgment, or a value judgment. And this could be a tone issue if the reader does not agree with what the writer is saying. So here are ways that comes out. WH words. They presuppose the truth or certainty of a proposition in the same sentence. So if you take a look, when will the merger occur? It presupposes that the merger will occur. It's just asking when. So maybe, will the merger occur? First getting the information. Or maybe you want to use a conditional structure. If the merger occurs, then we may, and so on. Another way to accidentally have a presupposition trigger is when you use factive verbs, which presuppose the existence or truth of something in that sentence. So Brown demonstrated the superiority of his method. Demonstrated is pretty strong, meaning it's irrefutable, it's been demonstrated. Maybe that's a factive verb that can be replaced tonally with something that's presupposes less. He claims that his method is superior. You can sense the tone has changed there about the truth of that sentence. Implicative verbs presuppose a judgment about some action. So, you failed to enclose a check is presupposing a judgment about the person who did not enclose a check, versus you did not enclose a check, or even something else like the check was missing in the envelope, or what have you. The implicative of the verb failed has lots of implications about a judgment on the reader of that sentence, so it's best to avoid those implications. And that's how you revise to improve tone.